The world is changing, and so is the way Americans are viewed abroad. 2025 marks a shocking shift as 10 countries are now telling Americans, "You're not welcome here anymore." If you think you're safe with your U.S. passport, think again. This is more than just a travel warning. It's a global crisis. Pack your bags, America, because some countries want you out. What's behind this drastic turn? From trade tensions to political fallout, Americans are no longer the welcome visitors they once were. Let's dive into the 10 countries where Americans are not welcome in 2025, and why this could be the beginning of a worldwide shift against U.S. citizens. Before we move on, hit the like button to boost this video in the algorithm and support our work. Number 10. Venezuela. Venezuela once welcomed American tourists to its beaches and cities, but now the U.S. Department of State has issued a Level 4 Do Not Travel advisory, citing crime, civil unrest, and the arbitrary arrest of U.S. citizens. The country's internal crisis has only deepened, with many public services collapsing and inflation spiraling out of control. Since 2019, the U.S. Embassy in Caracas has suspended operations. That means Americans who enter the country face huge risks with no consular support if things go wrong. According to the State Department, violent crime, such as homicide, armed robbery, kidnapping, and carjacking, is common. Diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Venezuela remain frozen. Tensions have worsened under President Nicolas Maduro's regime, and Americans are often viewed with suspicion by the government. That makes even short visits dangerous. From crime-ridden streets to government surveillance, Venezuela has become one of the most inhospitable places on the map for U.S. travelers. It's not just about travel restrictions, it's about survival. Number 9. Libya. Libya is another country where Americans are completely unwelcome. A Level 4 Do Not Travel advisory warns of terrorism, armed conflict, and kidnapping. The U.S. Embassy in Tripoli shut down operations in 2014, and no consular services are available. Years of civil war have left the country fractured and lawless. Armed militias operate freely, and travelers, especially Americans, are prime targets for kidnapping or extortion. The security environment is described as unpredictable and extremely dangerous. According to the State Department, crime, terrorism, civil unrest, kidnapping, and armed conflict are widespread. This is not a place for tourism, adventure, or even short-term business. With no functioning government and ongoing clashes between rival factions, Libya offers zero guarantees for safety or accountability. Even humanitarian workers tread carefully. In Libya, the risks aren't hypothetical. For Americans, setting foot here is more than ill-advised. It's reckless. Before we reveal the next country, be sure to subscribe. Your support lets us keep exploring the untold stories and sharing content that truly matters. The more of you who join, the deeper we can dig. Come along for the journey. Number 8. Somalia. Somalia is one of the most dangerous destinations in the world for U.S. citizens in 2025. The U.S. Department of State has issued a Level 4 Do Not Travel advisory, warning of threats like terrorism, piracy, civil unrest, health crises, and kidnappings. There are no consular services available, and American citizens have limited recourse if caught in danger. According to the travel advisory, terrorist groups continue to plot and carry out attacks in Somalia, targeting airports, government buildings, hotels, and other public venues. The U.S. government has almost no ability to provide emergency services to citizens in the region. Even aid organizations struggle to operate, highlighting just how risky the country is. Al-Shabaab and other extremist groups are known to specifically target foreigners, including Americans, increasing the likelihood of abduction or violence. The risks are especially pronounced in southern Somalia, Mogadishu, and areas along the Kenyan border. No travel insurance covers such areas. The advisory makes it clear, U.S. citizens should not travel to Somalia, and those already there should depart if it is safe to do so. This language underscores the extreme instability on the ground. The nation's lack of infrastructure only compounds the danger. For Americans considering visiting the Horn of Africa, Somalia is a firm no-go. It's not about diplomacy or politics, it's about survival. Number 7. Yemen. Yemen remains a hotbed of conflict, and for Americans, it's one of the deadliest destinations in the world. The U.S. State Department advises against all travel, labeling it Level 4, Do Not Travel due to terrorism, civil unrest, armed conflict, and even landmines. U.S. citizens are warned of severe risks to life and liberty. According to the advisory, the U.S. Embassy in Sana'a suspended operations in 2015 due to the deteriorating security situation and remains closed to this day. With no diplomatic protection and ongoing conflict between rebel groups and government forces, the region is essentially lawless for foreigners. American citizens in Yemen may face threats from terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, ACOP, as well as from Houthi rebels. Targeted kidnappings are frequent, and travel routes are riddled with danger. There is no reliable commercial air service in or out of the country. U.S. authorities state clearly, kidnappings, armed conflict, and health risks are widespread. Travelers are subject to arbitrary arrest and long detentions without access to U.S. support. This paints a grim picture for any would-be visitor. While Yemen boasts historical sites and unique culture, no trip is worth risking your life. In 2025, Americans should avoid Yemen at all costs. Number 6. Syria. Syria has become one of the most dangerous places in the world for Americans, and the U.S. government isn't mincing words. The State Department has placed Syria under a Level 4, Do Not Travel Advisory, highlighting the ongoing threats of terrorism, civil unrest, kidnapping, and armed conflict. Since the U.S. Embassy in Damascus suspended operations in 2012, no consular services are available, meaning Americans who go there are essentially on their own. Travelers face grave risks if they enter Syria, even in areas considered relatively quiet. Extremist groups and government forces both pose a threat, and arbitrary detention is a serious concern. Journalists, aid workers, and even tourists have been kidnapped or killed, often with no warning or negotiation options. Syria's complicated and fractured civil war adds a layer of unpredictability that few travelers are equipped to handle. Beyond the security threats, basic infrastructure like healthcare and transportation is nearly non-existent in many parts of the country. For Americans, there's virtually no safe zone. According to the U.S. State Department, terrorist groups continue plotting attacks in Syria, and violence between armed groups and government forces continues throughout the country. This makes it clear why Syria is firmly on the no-go list. Add to that the fact that Syria remains a geopolitical flashpoint, with multiple international actors involved and constantly shifting battle lines. For Americans, the red flags are everywhere, and no amount of preparation can guarantee safety. Number 5. Iran. For decades, Iran has maintained a tense relationship with the United States, and in 2025, it remains one of the most hostile environments for American travelers. The U.S. Department of State warns against all travel to Iran, citing risks of kidnapping and arbitrary detention. With no formal diplomatic ties between the two countries, assistance for U.S. citizens is severely limited. Americans have been detained in Iran on vague charges such as espionage or threatening national security. These arrests often serve political purposes, making them extremely difficult to resolve. Even dual citizens have faced lengthy prison sentences with little to no due process. Adding to the danger, Iran's Revolutionary Guard actively monitors and targets foreign visitors. This includes journalists, academics, and business travelers who may be viewed as threats simply for being American. Personal electronic devices are often searched, and surveillance is widespread. The U.S. State Department states, U.S. citizens visiting or residing in Iran have been kidnapped, arrested, and detained on spurious charges. That level of risk is not just theoretical, it's happening in real time. Without an embassy or consulate to turn to, American travelers in Iran would be isolated and vulnerable in a crisis. In a country where the political climate is deeply antagonistic, travel becomes more than a risk. It becomes a liability. Number 4. Afghanistan. Afghanistan remains one of the most dangerous countries on earth for Americans, and it's not getting safer. Since the Taliban regained control in 2021, the U.S. Embassy in Kabul has suspended all operations, and there's virtually no American diplomatic presence left. The State Department's Level 4, Do Not Travel Advisory paints a grim picture for anyone even considering a visit. The threats are as diverse as they are deadly. Terrorism, kidnapping, armed conflict, and civil unrest are part of daily life. Extremist groups have historically targeted Westerners, and U.S. citizens are especially vulnerable due to America's long involvement in the region. The risks extend far beyond the capital, with many provinces essentially ungovernable. According to the U.S. Department of State, the security situation is unstable, and the threat to U.S. citizens in Afghanistan is extremely high. Humanitarian organizations have also been forced to scale back operations, citing dangerous conditions and hostile treatment. Those who do enter the country do so with full knowledge that assistance, if needed, may not come. The collapse of Afghanistan's government and the rise of authoritarian rule have destroyed the already fragile infrastructure. Airports are barely operational, roads are riddled with checkpoints, and the healthcare system is overwhelmed. The Taliban's restrictive governance only adds another layer of risk, especially for women and journalists. Even if diplomatic ties were restored tomorrow, Afghanistan's underlying instability ensures that U.S. travelers will not be welcome anytime soon. The risks are simply too high, and the government in control is too hostile. For Americans, Afghanistan is a closed door, one that's likely to stay shut. Number 3. Russia. Russia is no longer just diplomatically distant. It has become an active risk zone for American travelers. Tensions between the U.S. and Russia have soared since the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and bilateral relations have all but collapsed. Americans in Russia now face a very different landscape from just a few years ago. The U.S. Department of State strongly advises against travel to Russia, citing the arbitrary enforcement of local laws, harassment of U.S. citizens, and the invasion of Ukraine. U.S. citizens have been detained without clear charges and, in some cases, used as geopolitical pawns. The deteriorating relationship makes even basic consular assistance unreliable. Travelers report being followed, questioned, and searched without cause. Russian authorities have increased scrutiny of foreign nationals, especially Americans, under the guise of national security. Independent media, civil rights groups, and even tourists are now viewed through a suspicious lens. As of 2024, the U.S. Embassy in Moscow operates with severe limitations, and many routine services are unavailable. Flights have been restricted, and U.S.-issued credit cards are no longer widely accepted. The Russian government's surveillance network also creates a sense of constant monitoring, even in major cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg. Add to that Russia's strict media laws and unpredictable enforcement, and Americans are one wrong word or photo away from serious consequences. In today's geopolitical climate, Russia doesn't just dislike Americans, it actively deters them. If you're holding a U.S. passport, Russia is not a destination, it's a warning sign. Number 2. North Korea. North Korea is perhaps the most impenetrable country on the planet for Americans. Since 2017, U.S. passports have been invalid for travel to North Korea without special government validation. The U.S. State Department has issued a Level 4, Do Not Travel advisory, citing the risk of arrest and long-term detention. The political relationship between the two nations is virtually non-existent, adding to the danger. Americans who've attempted entry without authorization have faced severe consequences, including imprisonment and even forced confessions. The most notable case was Otto Warmbier, whose tragic death after detention highlighted the grave risks involved. In 2025, nothing has improved. The State Department continues to emphasize U.S. passports are not valid for travel to, in, or through North Korea without special validation. With no embassy presence and no recourse for detained citizens, North Korea remains a hardline no-go zone. There are no signs of policy softening anytime soon. Geopolitical tensions, nuclear posturing, and isolationist policies make it one of the most hostile places for Americans worldwide. Number 1. Cuba. Cuba may be geographically close, but politically it remains distant for most American travelers. While not officially banned, tourist travel to Cuba is prohibited under U.S. law and tightly regulated under categories like journalism, humanitarian projects, and family visits. In 2025, these restrictions remain in place, further complicated by a Level 2, Exercise Increased Caution Advisory from the U.S. State Department. The advisory cites shortages of fuel, food, medicine, and the potential for petty crime as reasons to be cautious. Travelers also face unpredictable changes in Cuban immigration policies. According to the State Department, U.S. citizens traveling to Cuba must comply with Treasury Department regulations, a bureaucratic maze that has discouraged casual visits. Despite improved relations under previous administrations, recent shifts have reversed much of that progress. The island's economic woes, combined with strained diplomatic ties, mean Americans face a difficult and confusing road to entry. It's not a hostile rejection, but a legal and logistical blockade that, for many, feels like a closed door. From war zones to diplomatic black holes, these 10 countries stand as firm barriers for American travelers in 2025. Whether it's outright hostility, legal roadblocks, or a history of detaining U.S. citizens, the message is clear. Not all destinations are welcoming. As global politics shift and travel regulations tighten, understanding where Americans are unwelcome isn't just about avoiding risk, it's about knowing how the world sees the U.S. Stay alert, stay informed, and always check official travel advisories before booking a flight. Because in some parts of the world, an American passport is more burden than benefit.